So the next one is social rest. And this one I think is pretty helpful because we all have social batteries. So whether or not you like to be around people or don't like to be around people, giving yourself permission to skip something this season is important. Or at the beginning of the year, all of next year, it's okay to say no to things. I think sometimes we have a hard time accepting that is true. So I just want to encourage you that it's okay to say no. Doesn't make you a bad person, makes you sometimes a healthy person. So, and then the last one is spiritual rest. I don't know any of you, so I don't know if you have faith or not. So, regardless, this is really more about like figuring out what helps you ground yourself. Like, where do you find meaning and purpose? What gives you joy? Things like that. That is such a strong pillar. Some people pray, some people meditate, some people garden. I'm a big gardener because I think it helps me get back in tune with that part of myself. So really this is more about like taking time this season to figure out where do you draw strength from for you as a person? What gives you meaning? What eases your way? And then if you know what that is, lean into that. And if you don't know, I hope that you have a beautiful time exploring that because that's so important. And I think we learn a lot about ourselves when we're given that space to figure out like, what speaks to me. It's so good. The next one is I was gonna end with the spoon story, which you know, but you don't know. So
yeah, you know, I don't know.
It's really, I'm so sorry that it printed so small, but you're welcome to have some. I thought I would just read it because I wasn't sure what everyone, like how many people would be here or not. It is so small.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It is way teeny.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I had my glasses on if I could read it.
I can email this out too.
I have good glasses.
But I will read it, especially just because it's so small. And I really wanted to share this because I wanted to say thank you for giving me one of your spoons, because that's essentially what you've done today.
And ditto, back at you. Thank you for giving us one of your spoons.
Absolutely.
And
So
Cheryl for giving us
Yeah.
a spoon. Yeah.
I think she gave us a couple.
Yeah.
So I'll read it if that's okay with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the spoon theory says, my best friend and I were in the diner talking. As usual, it was very late and we were eating French fries with gravy, which gravy is interesting.
Yeah, I'm kind of gagging at that.
Yeah.
Okay.
They may be Canadian.
No, that's right. They could be Canadian. Like normal girls our age, we spent a lot of time in the diner while in college, and most of the time we spent talking about boys, music, trivial things that seemed very important at the time. We never got serious about anything in particular and spent most of our time laughing. As I went to take some of my medicine with a snack as I usually did, she watched me with an awkward kind of stare, instead of continuing the conversation. She then asked me out of the blue what it felt like to have lupus and be sick. I was shocked, not only because she asked the random question, but also because I assumed she knew all there was to know about lupus. She came to doctors with me. She saw me walk with a cane and throw up in the bathroom. She had seen me cry in pain. What else was there to know? I started to ramble on about pills and aches and pains, but she kept pursuing and didn't seem satisfied with my answers. I was a little surprised, as being my roommate in college and friend for years, I thought she already knew the medical definition of lupus. Then she looked at me with a face every sick person knows well. The face of pure curiosity about something no one healthy can truly understand. She asked what it was like, not physically, but what it felt like to be me, to be sick. As I tried to gain my composure, I glanced around the table for help or guidance, or at least to stall for some time to think. I was trying to find the right words. How do I answer a question I never was able to answer for myself? How do I explain every detail of every day being affected and give the emotions a sick person goes through with clarity? I could have given up, cracked a joke like I usually do, and changed the subject. But I remember thinking, if I don't explain this, how could I ever expect her to understand? If I can't explain this to my best friend, how could I explain my world to anyone else? I had to at least try. At that moment, the spoon theory was born. I quickly grabbed every spoon on the table. Hell, I grabbed spoons off other tables. I looked at her in the eyes and said, "Here you go, you have lupus." She looked at me slightly confused, as anyone would have when they're just given a handful of spoons. The cold metal spoons clanked in my hands as I grouped them together and shoved them into her hands. I explained that the difference in being sick and being healthy is having to make choices or to consciously think about things when the rest of the world doesn't have to. The healthy have the luxury of a life without choices, a gift most people take for granted. Most people start the day with a limited amount of possibilities and energy to do whatever they desire, especially young people. For the most part, they don't need to worry about the effects of their actions. So for my explanation, I used spoons to convey this point. I wanted something for her to actually hold, for me to then take away, since most people who get sick feel a loss of a life they once knew. If I was in control of taking away the spoons, then she would know what it feels like to have someone or something else, in this case lupus, being in control. She grabbed the spoons with excitement. She didn't understand what I was doing, but she's always up for a good time. So I guess she thought I was gonna crack a joke or something like I usually do when talking about a touchy subject. Little did she know how serious I would become. I asked her to count her spoons. She asked why, and I explained that when you are healthy, you expect to have a never-ending supply of spoons. But when you have to now plan your day, sorry, it's very small writing, you need to know exactly how many spoons you're starting with. It doesn't guarantee that you might not lose some along the way, but at least it helps to know where you're starting. She counted out 12 spoons. She laughed and said she wanted more. I said no. And I knew right away that this little game would work when she looked disappointed that she hadn't even started yet. I've wanted more spoons for years and haven't found a way to get any more. Why should she? I also told her to always be conscious of how many she had and to not drop them because she can never forget she has lupus. I asked her to list off the tasks of her day, including the most simple. As she rattled off daily chores or just fun things to do, I explained how each one would cost her a spoon. When she jumped right into getting ready for work as her first task of the morning, I cut her off and took away a spoon. I practically jumped down her throat. I said, "No, you don't get to just get up. You have to crack open your eyes and then realize you are late. You didn't sleep well the night before. You have to crawl out of bed. And then you have to make yourself something to eat before you can do anything else. Because if you don't, you can't take your medicine. And if you don't take your medicine, you might as well give up all your spoons for the day and tomorrow too." I quickly took away a spoon and she realized she hasn't even gotten dressed yet. Showering cost her a spoon, just for washing her hair and shaving her legs. Reaching high and low that early in the morning could actually cost more than one spoon, but I figured I would give her a break. I didn't want to scare her right away. Getting dressed was worth another spoon. I stopped her and broke down every task to show how every little detail needs to be thought about. You cannot simply just throw clothes on when you're sick. I explained that I have to see what clothes I can physically put on. If my hands hurt that day, buttons are out of the question. If I have bruises that day, I need to wear long sleeves. And if I have a fever, I need a sweater to stay warm, and so on. If my hair's falling out, I need to spend more time to look presentable. And then you need to factor in about another 5 minutes for feeling badly that it took you 2 hours to do this. I think she was starting to understand when she theoretically didn't even get to work and she was left with 6 spoons. I then explained to her that she needed to choose the rest of her day wisely, since when your spoons are gone, they're gone. Sometimes you can borrow against tomorrow's spoons, but just think how hard tomorrow will be with less spoons. I also needed to explain that a person who is sick always lives with a looming thought that tomorrow may be the day that a cold comes, or an infection, or any number of things that could be very dangerous. So you don't want to run low on spoons because you never know what you're truly going to need them. I didn't want to depress her, but I also needed to be realistic. And unfortunately, being prepared for the worst part of a real day, that's for me. We went through the rest of the day, and she slowly learned that skipping lunch would cost her a spoon, as well as standing on a train, or even typing at her computer too long. She was forced to make choices and to think about things differently. Hypothetically, she had to choose not to run errands so that she could eat dinner that night. When we got to the end of her pretend day, she said she was hungry. I summarized that she had to eat dinner, but she only had 1 spoon left. If she cooked, she wouldn't have enough energy to clean the pots. If she went out to dinner, she might be too tired to drive home safely. Then I also explained that I didn't even bother to add into this game that she was also nauseous, that cooking was probably out of the question anyway. So she decided to make soup. It was easy. I then said it's only 7 p.m. You have the rest of the night, so maybe end up with 1 spoon so you can do something fun, or clean your apartment, or do chores, but you can't do it all. I rarely see her emotional, so when I saw her upset, I knew maybe I was getting through to her. I didn't want my friend to be upset, but at the same time, I was happy to think finally maybe somebody understood a little bit about me. She had tears in her eyes and asked quietly, "Christine, how do you do it? How do you really do this every day?" I explained that some days were worse than others. Some days I have more spoons than most, but I can never make it go away, and I can't forget about it. I always have to think about it. I handed her a spoon I had been holding in reserve. I said simply, "I've learned to live life with an extra spoon in my pocket, in reserve. You need to always be prepared." It's hard. It's the hardest thing I ever had to learn is to slow down, to not do everything. I fight this to this day. I hate feeling left out, having to choose to stay home or to not get things done that I want to. I wanted her to feel that frustration. I wanted her to understand that everything everyone else does comes so easy, but for me, it is 100 little jobs in one. I need to think about the weather, my temperature that day, and the whole day's plans before I can attack any one given thing. When other people can simply do things, I have to attack it and make a plan like I'm strategizing a war. It is in that lifestyle, the difference between being sick and healthy. It is the beautiful ability to not think and just do. I miss that freedom. I miss never having to count spoons. After we were emotional and talked about this for a little while longer, I sensed she was sad. Maybe she finally understood. Maybe she realized that she never could truly and honestly say she understands. But at least now she might not complain so much when I can't go out for dinner some nights, or when I never seem to make it to her house and she's always coming to mine. I gave her a hug when we walked out of the diner. I had the 1 spoon in my hand and said, "Don't worry, I see this as a blessing. I have been forced to think about everything I do." Do you know how many spoons people waste every day? I don't have room for wasted time or wasted spoons, and I chose to spend this time with you. Ever since that night, I have used the spoon theory to explain my life to many people. In fact, my family and friends refer to spoons all the time. It's become a code word for what I can and cannot do. Once people understand the spoon theory, they seem to understand me better. But I also think they live their life a little differently too. I think it isn't just good for understanding lupus, but for anyone dealing with any disability or illness. Hopefully they don't take so much for granted or their life in general. I give a piece of myself in every sense of the word when I do anything. It's become an inside joke. I have become famous for saying to people jokingly that they should feel special when I spend time with them because they have one of my spoons.
It's a great story.
It is great.
So I offer that, not really knowing why any of you are here, but I think that we all have spoons, and I appreciate you giving me one, and it's an honor, and so, yeah. That's really all I had for